Hi, it's Moxie Divine. This is the first of hopefully a lot of videos, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to say just yet or what I'm going to be led to bring to the collective, but I wanted to get things started. I've been a healer for a very long time, and I've worked with a lot of shadow, but to that I bring a lot of light. And one of the things that I definitely started realizing relatively short time ago, maybe within the last year, is that how I've been doing that for so long, so well, was that I actually had been channeling higher level spirits, ancestors, spirit guides. And I used to just call that intuition, but I'm starting to realize and had started to realize that they can help a lot with the heavy lifting. If you are a light worker like me and you deal with a lot of shadow, that is probably one of the best ways to share the load, to not have to do so much of the heavy lifting, for not as much of your energy to be drained in that process, right? And another tip, I know this was something that it took me years to figure out, but it was definitely worth it, was picturing a force field around myself that kind of had little holes in it. And the purpose of those holes was that I could read the energy of who I'm with, but then I could close the holes so I don't absorb the energy of who I'm with, to be able to help them to figure out what they needed to work on, what they needed to fix, and how they can fix it. With them doing the work, of course. You can't work harder on people or clients than they need to be working on themselves. Another way, it's kind of like the 49-51 on their part, right? So the force field was big, though. Figuring that out and learning to use that as an empath, I mean, since I was a kid, really helped for me to not feel so heavy and so drained when I would go home from work. And I've been in the field now 30 years. That's a really long time. And I know that part of my journey here and part of why I'm doing this now, part of why I am doing these videos, is to really start getting in touch with other light workers, other healers, whether you deal with physical health, emotional health, energy work, whatever that is, so that you can do this sustainably without your light getting dimmed in the process, right? So I guess the last thing I want to talk about is, how do you end the day when you work with people and there's so much shadow that's being brought your way? The way I figured out how to do that is kind of like picturing a light switch, right? When I go into my job, I turn it on, right? Oh, wow, that looks a lot better. And for the duration of my shift, the light switch is on. My therapist hat, my empath hat is fully on. I am charged up, ready to do 110% for whoever shows up for me. However, at the end of my shift, when the day is done and I have finished signing my last note, which for me, I learned how to document while the client is there so they can correct me if I miss something, but also so I leave the day with nothing to catch up on, which is a big thing. I know a lot of people in our field tend to get backlogged and caught up in having to do charting. So that's another tip, side tip. But the idea of, at the end of the day, when all of my notes are yes signed, yes signed, yes signed, ready to rock and roll and go home, I turn the switch off. And then I take that hat off of the empath. And I go home, I get in my car, and I do me. Take care of me, fill my cup until I have to be back in that office again. And my aim and my hope is that through doing these videos, I want to create courses. I've already written a couple of books. My own book, memoir, kind of skill building guide, really I think would be helpful for light workers. It's called Adventures in Emotional Alchemy. You can't even make this shit up, because if anybody works in this field, you've seen and heard stuff that you legit can't even just make up. It's just not even possible. It's too much. It's too strange, too bizarre sometimes. It's out on Amazon. Take a look. Leave a review if you can. Please like and subscribe if that would be something you feel down to do. But yeah, so turning the light switch off at the end of the day. Big way to help really close the cup out of pouring for that day, to then pour it into myself, take care of me, whether that's fixing dinner, whether that's laying out clothes for the next day so I don't have to think about it in the morning, whatever that may need to be, laying out jewelry. I'm all about my jewelry, right? So stuff like that, though, so I don't have to think about those things in the morning. So I just get up with my gentle alarm clock and I rock and roll getting into my day. Taking care of my cats, helping my husband feed them, and getting the boxes cleaned, and then having my breakfast, and having some coffee, and then, spending a little time with my cats, my husband, until I go to work. That also fills my cup because they are my village. I do have some other people who are my village, but for most people who work in these fields, those circles tend to be very exclusive, and they should be, because sometimes we need to be alone. Sometimes we need to recharge our battery. For me, lately, that's been being outside, brief vacation out on my deck, doing my toenails, putting my feet in the grass, whatever it takes for me to feel that recharge my battery, which is so goddamn important. I can't stress it enough. So to recap, share the load. Really allow yourself. I really want this lamp in here. I'm sorry, this was my first video. Recharge your battery by, for one thing, taking care of you. Force field, read the energy, don't absorb the energy. To chart while you work. The client will actually appreciate it more often than not, so they can correct something if you miscaptured it. Don't have to leave and catch up with any notes. Another tip. But channeling, that's a big one. For those of us who are called into this field, we are absolutely tapped into this calling. It's not a job, it's a calling. And as such, spirit, whether that's our ancestors, guardian angels, spirit guides, archangels, higher than that, even divine source. Divine source is a big part of that, because we are all part of it, and it is a part of us. We are divine spark in human suits, right? Doing what some would call the Lord's work. And that is so very valuable, so very important. But in order to be able to do this, to be able to go the distance, and mind you, I've been doing this 3 decades. This is some tips. Not that you have to do this. This is take it for what you will. But it's worth considering. Some of us, actually, it's all about bio, psycho, social, spiritual, right? So the spiritual is really where I started learning that was the missing element. That was what I had already been using, but didn't even know it, didn't even acknowledge it until I finally got the message that, yeah, I've been channeling all this time. And every time I allow that to come through me, a crown chakra down, out my mouth, throat chakra, it always hits the bullseye. There have been times I have said things. Being a city girl, I am originally from East Coast, New York, that are like, don't know where that came from. All hat, no cattle once came out of my mouth, which is not a usual type of thing I would ever say. So it came from somewhere, but it wasn't me. It's kind of what the whole point is. To talk to somebody who was having issues with self-esteem, like it's all this form and no substance behind it. So all hat, no cattle. Like I was mystified. That came out of my mouth. The client laughed. She understood completely. Bullseye. That was the turning point. I really started to understand at that point that sometimes my intuitions were not my own, and that's okay. I am a circuit, a conduit through which these messages come. And it's all about bringing light. It's all about shining the light, our light, to help others to shine their light, to find their best selves. But we can't do it for them. And we need to also make sure we're doing that for ourselves. Full stop. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Because if you don't fill your own cup, you cannot pour into others. And it took me a long time to figure that out. But I will say, once I did, and I really started making that point to put myself at the top of my own priority list, it got so much better. And I know that this work can be so helpful and so fulfilling and help us feel good about us. But it's not the only thing that we are. It's not the only thing that we do that brings our value to the world around us. Just our energy, our presence in itself brings that light to the collective, to those that we serve, to those that we love. And there is no substitute for that. But in order for that light to be shiny, bright, sustainable, like the oil in the lamp, gotta recharge your own battery. Force field, light switch, chart while you work. So those are my first 3 tips. I know eventually I am going to figure out how to put all of this together more kind of succinctly to create courses. Again, I already wrote a book. There's a children's version of that book on its way, The Tale of the Glowing Dot. Once it gets copyrighted, it's going to be out on Amazon too. And I encourage you all, take a peek. Adventures in Emotional Alchemy. You can't even make this shit up. Because believe you me, 30 years in mental health, working every kind of level of care there is, except partial hospitalization, that like double stuff between inpatient and outpatient. Yeah, there are definitely tales that I have borne witness to. Again, stranger than fiction. But you know what? It's all been part of the ride, which sometimes has been bumpy, sometimes smoother. But I know that, again, what I'm trying to put together now, what I am trying to create and achieve, is all about helping light workers, helping the helpers, as opposed to the masses and helping clients. So, like, share, subscribe. I look forward to, hopefully, some new inspiration hitting me and another video coming out of me, and we'll see where this goes. So, yeah. Moxie Divine, signing off. Take care, everybody.